All right, everyone. Welcome back to Untitled Theme Entertainment Design Show. This is episode 97, 10 questions with OE experiences. This is Patrick Kling over here. And of course, we have
I'm Andy Garfield, your co-host with Patrick Kling.
live. We're broadcasting live through the interwebs from Orlando, Florida, and sunny Universal City. Or are you're in Burbank more?
Burbank, yeah.
Burbank. The two epicenters of themed entertainment. We broadcast every few weeks. We're happy to be here. We got great guests in the bullpen. Of course, we have a huge catalog of episodes as well. Make sure you like and subscribe. Follow us. We'd love to have you subscribe on YouTube. YouTube is a great place for discovery and all that kind of good stuff. And LinkedIn, of course. You know, we have thousands of followers. We appreciate all of you, and we're happy to shine the light here on themed experiences and themed entertainment. So Andy, I mean, we got a couple of great, actually a few gentlemen in the old bullpen here waiting to go out. But before then, we always like to talk about the news, and it's been quite a lot of news in just the past couple of weeks. Andy, you want to start us off and let's chat about it a little bit.
Sure. I mean, like I said, working backwards. Today, the big announcement of Dark Universe, Epic Universe, down in Orlando, the new theme park that's going to open next year. A lot of great art, videos, and interviews and everything coming out today. And it just looks spectacular. I think, it's everybody's, most people's most anticipated land because everybody loves Universal Monsters. And I think that for a long time, Universal has underestimated how much people love Universal Monsters for how excited people are for this new land. And obviously, a lot of care and love has gone into what that's going to be, and that's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, it's actually kind of interesting, just in the whole scheme of themed entertainment and themed experiences. We rarely do you see like a really terrifyingly scary ride that's not more like thrill based. And maybe you could say Harry Potter. Those things are kind of scary with the Whomping Willow and things like that. But like if they're going full, jump scare kind of thing, like Alien Encounter was. I mean, that could be very interesting to see that. So yeah, but highly anticipated and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, when the werewolf coaster is the one that's considered the family attraction in the land, I think we're in for some actual, maybe skirting PG-13 rated R kind of horror, or at least some pretty good scares. Nice,
Yeah.
and the monsters are scary themselves, and I'd love to see. I'm really excited to see how this comes together. I mean, like you, we probably know too much, but I'm still excited to see how it comes together.
Yeah, well, and it's always fun whenever these big things get announced because LinkedIn is full of people who said, "Hey, I worked on this project, for this period," and you just see all the people that come together to create these things, which is really cool. So,
yeah,
congrats. We'll save our congratulations till it opens next year, but it's exciting, and it's also cool that they're really making these announcements a bit ahead of time. In the past, it seems like Universal waits till like they're opening the ride to talk about what it is, it's a churro stand or whatever it is. So, I mean, it's nice that they're getting out there with all this. And
yeah, I think it's really great, and I think it's great that it's giving people, our friends and colleagues, a chance to be like, oh, finally, this thing I've been working on that I couldn't talk about for 3 years or 5 years or whatever like that. And so far Universal seems to have been pretty cool about people, talking about their contributions to it.
yeah, and well, with summer, it really brings the opening of a lot of new attractions. Hold on, actually, I don't know if this is a code for something, but
I think Michael fell asleep on his keyboard again.
okay, so he is falling asleep. Michael, his avatar has fallen asleep. Thanks for watching, Michael Libby. So we had a slew of openings around the world and also locally as well. Andy, what's next on the news?
Well, Disney's Fantasy Springs at Tokyo Disney Sea has, I believe, opened to the public, or at least has opened.
Yeah, it is.
And man, like I've watched those videos so many times, and your friend of mine, Ben Zalak, in front of the show, was just there with his wife and young daughter, and I watched his Instagram stories like it was my job.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I did too. It was I watched. They're all down now, but he was just going like the opening day and all that. Like, but I mean, they have like the BQ, they have the Lightning Lane or whatever they call it, Fast Pass, all that.
Yeah.
And it was fun to hear his reaction. And actually, another friend of mine went out there. This is in Japan right now, traveling right now too, and he went to it. And so Yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited to see whenever. I don't know. It's such a big trip to get out there, but congrats to the crews. And I'm hearing that of good things about the Frozen Evolution and the Peter Pan, next generation of what what a enhanced motion vehicle, film based attraction can be. So cool deal.
Yeah. And then down in your neck of the woods, Tiana's Bayou Adventure is I think have you gone on with the annual pass holder preview?
I did. I didn't. I have been on the attraction, so it's in. It was in cast member previews. It was an annual pass preview. I think it might be an annual pass. I think it's an annual pass holder previews right now.
Yeah.
June 20th is the official opening date, and I have been on it, but I'm not going to say a word about my experience.
June 20th is today, so it's not opening today.
28th. 28th.
Oh, June 28th. Yeah.
Yeah. So
are you embargoing yourself?
Yeah, I'll just embargo myself, and I want to go on again to really form my opinion because the first time and all that, but it's a very interesting experience. Very interesting experience. Just to compare it to the original, and then to just in general, this is a ride that replaced or it's a retheme of an attraction that by everyone's standard was very popular, right? So it's quite a it's not like it was Maelstrom underutilized. It was a thing that they chose to replace due to the history and all that. That's been kind of settled history to this point. So congrats to the crew for opening the ride, right? I mean, it's running, it's operating daily, and we'll have to figure out how we can talk about that publicly, right? So I'm excited. Maybe we can get the crew to come on and talk about it. We'll see. Who knows?
Well, I'll leave that up to you.
yeah. Sorry, we try. It's been hard. Well,
No, that's sensational. Really quick, also premiered at the new nighttime spectacular Universal Studios Orlando. Your friend of mine and our guest as well, Jason McManus, created and directed that show with Mike Aiello and everybody at Universal Entertainment. And by all accounts, it's a masterpiece. I can't wait to see it. I would rather not, watch it online. So I'm gonna, probably try to hold off until November when I go out there for IAPA.
Yeah.
Very excited to see that in person. So I know that he's been working on it for 2 years, more than 2 years now. Well, designing new fountains and all kinds of stuff. The first drone show at Universal. So.
Yeah. Well, I heard it basically like the hurricane kind of damaged the equipment, so they had to replace it. I actually don't know if that's true, but
yeah,
there was mid-run.
The entire fountain system, all the EER flooded and everything like that. So it's all new everything.
Yeah. Well, I've heard positive things from people that I trust, so I'm excited to see it one day. Have to make it out there.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Anyway, well, I think that's holding our guests long enough.
Yeah, well, before we do that, no.
Okay. Oh, how was your drag event fundraiser for?
It was really well. It was fun, a lot of fun. So we had the Dragland benefit show for the for Big Break Foundation, and there's a lot of fun things we're working on with Big Break Foundation in general, and we're working on our APA program and all that. But no, it's a lot of fun. So it was the first LGBTQIA plus kind of fun, lighthearted event in person in Orlando for the themed experience design world, and it was fun. I mean, the drag queens were hilarious and fun, and they really brought it. And even though we were at a venue, Hamburger Mary's, that turned out to close down 4 days before the event, we managed to relocate it somewhere else, and it was a lot of fun. So appreciate those that came out there and showed their support. But yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Good.
And then apparently Michael Libby, my dog sat on my keyboard on the last one. Sure. Fair enough.
I said cat, but I didn't know he had a dog.
Yeah. I think he parents that cat or the dog, I think, if I recall correctly. Michael, you can fact check me on that. Well, yeah, let's bring on our the guest who have been waiting long enough. Let's bring him out. We have Matthew Cross, Louis Frazier, Sam Russo, and I hope I got all those names correctly on the pronunciation. Welcome to a Themed Experience Television. You're live around the world. How y'all doing?
Great.
Doing well.
Great.
Cool.
Well, we're very happy to have you guys here finally. Yeah. We appreciate your flexibility when we had to kind of short notice cancel the other show and reschedule it. So very happy you guys are here, and I'm excited to learn all about what you guys are doing over there at OE.
Yeah, no worries at all. It gave us time to figure out what we're doing over here at OE before we talked about it.
You're like, what are we actually doing here? Well, we always like to start the show with, personal introductions and all that. So why don't we start with Matthew and just give us your, a little bit about you.
Well, again, I'm Matthew Cross. I'm CEO of OE Experiences and serve on the Themed Entertainment Association board as the president of Eastern North America, located in Knoxville, Tennessee, and really happy to be here.
I'm Louis Frazier, and I'm a co-founder with Matthew at OE. Been together since the beginning, obviously, about 4 years ago, but I've been involved in the industry in a side manner for several years, since the 90s, being a founder of Regal Cinemas. So we actually had entertainment venues that were more than just movie theaters. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in the broadcast, I'm sure. But thanks for having us on the show.
That's very interesting. Regal Cinemas, cool. And then how about Sam? Over to you.
Yeah, and Sam Russo, how you doing? I'm the VP of Themed Entertainment and Project Management, and I've been with the team for about 3.5 years, so almost since the beginning.
So before we get started, what does the OE stand for?
Stands for the overview effect, which is what astronauts experience when they see the Earth from space. And there's sort of two reasons for that. One was when we started the firm, we liked the sentiment that conveyed around, taking care of the planet, around just what that worldview represents as far as connectivity. And then the second is that sort of top-down viewpoint, which is how we approach a lot of our projects, is from the highest level, trying to encompass all the pieces of the puzzle.
That's great. I love it. I would never have guessed that.
Yep. Well, and I see, Matthew, you have a, in the background, you have the Earth there. So yep. I'm not sure if that's.
Yeah, that's our masthead. And there's actually a great picture. I should have sent it to you, but of Louis and I holding that up outside the house in the midst of COVID, because we started in February of 20, and that came in around April. So just perfect.
Well, why don't we talk a little about, you all have, pretty lengthy careers. We'd love to hear, one by one, if you want to tell us your path into the experience industry. And, Matthew, I'll go to you. And then we'll kind of do that same order again. Just, take some time, because we're long form here. We got time. So tell us all about your personal journey.
I'm happy to go, but I think we should start with Sam, because he's got the most storied career in the industry. How's that?
All right. So I started when I was in high school, really to get my dad off my back about getting a job. I went up to Universal Studios here in Hollywood, and I got a job in entertainment as an usher. They called us show controllers back then. And I had 4 siblings who were already working up there. So I knew that if I went up and I got a job for Easter peak season, I wouldn't have to work again until summer. And, I could hang out and have fun with my friends and check the box with my dad. And it worked out great. But I found that it was a really interesting environment to work in. I started making friends. There was a big social scene up there. And over time, I saw that there was opportunity as well. Plus, with the way they scheduled, it was a great place to be as I continued my education. So I ended up staying up there for 20 years. And I rose through the entertainment department, from usher to lead to foreman to a seasonal supervisor, and finally to a permanent management job. Ultimately, I became the director of entertainment for almost a decade. And, during peak season, I supervised up to 1,000 employees, ran all the live shows, all the shoulder season events like Halloween and Grinchmas. So I worked on operations almost exclusively for the first 7 years. And as time went by, I also started helping on the production side. And I ended up learning all about production as well as operations over the course of my career there. So spent 20 years there. I ended up getting my 20-year pin And then a couple of months later, I got downsized. And that was a bummer, but it was actually a great opportunity. My first job came about a month later, and I went over to Hong Kong. I did the fireworks show for Hong Kong Disneyland for the opening of the park. And so I spent the next 20 years basically working as a freelance producer and project director with companies like Imagineering and with Universal Creative. I also did a lot of time with Thinkwell and other firms like BRC. And literally, I worked on theme parks and attractions and museum exhibits and kind of everything in between. And I've done it all over the world for the last the second half of my career. And most recently, I was the VP of Attraction Development for Hirsch and Family Entertainment. And that led up to COVID. And so we all know how that story ends. And I was fortunate after that to meet up with these guys, and I've been with them ever since.
So, I mean, Sam, we probably could just bring you back on and talk about your career, because I mean, I was just looking at your LinkedIn just now, and I'm like, my jaw was kind of dropping at like how many cool projects you worked on, traveling around the world, being an expat, and working with all of our friends really in the industry, which is really awesome. So that's awesome to hear. Not that we wouldn't have Matthew or Lewis back, but I would just
No, it's Patrick. It's fine. I'm all surface. That's why I wanted you to have Sam go first.
Matthew's like, well,
let's see how this plays out. Let's see how this plays out before you invite us back. Yeah,
that's a good call.
Yeah. Cool. So quite a story, a storied career, really working around the world, really amazing on theme entertainment projects. Well, all right, Matthew. Well, go ahead. Let's hear your surface level. Charisma man himself. Let's hear it.
I don't have the nerve yet. It's to Lewis now.
Okay. All right.
All right. I'll go. So I started just like everyone else in this industry as a CPA with Price Waterhouse. So
sure.
That's exactly how I started my career. And along the way, I went with one client that we kind of became friends, and we started with a couple of movie theaters, and that became Regal Cinemas. So we grew it rapidly to be the world's largest theater chain at that time. And so in the 90s, give you some perspective, we were doubling in size every quarter for a 4 or 5 year stretch. So when we ultimately sold out to KKR, we had about 500 locations. And so that was just a great training ground. I took them public when I was like 27 years old. We had a great board who kind of took me under their wing. So it was a wonderful mentorship for me, and it kind of gave me that itch to get in the business. Toward the latter part of those years at Regal, we started experimenting with concepts beyond movie theaters. So we had some location-based entertainment that were adjacent to movie theaters. And so I kind of got involved with IAPA and this industry as a result of that in the 90s. Then when Regal sold, I took some of the chips off the table, opened my own businesses, from everything from construction, demolition to outpatient behavioral health clinics. So it couldn't be more diverse than from this industry. But then as we created OE experiences, I kind of came back in the IAPA fold and, started attending some of these same events. They were just much larger this time around.
Now, I do want to ask you, this is just a very personal question. Were you there when they bought Edwards Cinema in the California region?
I bought Edwards. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like our local.
Yeah.
That was in California. That was like our local cinema.
Yep.
Yeah.
We also bought United Artists at the same time. That's right.
Yeah. So just a really random tangent. The owner, or like the old guy from Edwards, who was like the guy, he lived in Balboa Island area in Newport Beach, and so like we would go trick or treating there, and he'd give out like cinema style big chocolates.
I love it.
Like the neighbor that we went around with, he was living there. Anyway, random tangent.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I don't know how. I mean, I think you should have just gone first, Matthew. Honestly, I mean, gosh, we have these two titans, and now the third titan. Here we go.
Yeah, something like that. So, I studied finance in school, the forward-looking counterpart to accounting, and my first job was actually as a financial intern with Harris in Cherokee, North Carolina. It was right when they were really starting to explosively grow. I'll never forget, being a part of their planning and analysis team as they forecasted how they were going to do. They had a geographic monopoly at the time on gaming. But as my lovely team will attest, I'm notoriously impatient in life. And most of the jobs I wanted in casino hospitality in particular were a long way away and probably involved me going overseas, which I didn't want. And I got an opportunity to work with a firm in Boston that had launched a collective investment trust trading commercial mortgage-backed securities. So this is during and after the subprime mortgage crisis. It was a great job. It was Boston, which is a cool city to live in, especially for someone from Tennessee. And we did really well. But after a year, that fund ended up being closed down because their gains were over 160%, and the principals no longer had to pay short-term taxes on that. So I was rewarded with an assistant property manager job, which I didn't want, and started to look for other opportunities. Ended up back in Knoxville in financial services for about 10 years. And then got a really unique opportunity to work with a serial entrepreneur here in Tennessee named Tom Boyd. Boyd family is pretty prominent here in Knoxville. His son, Randy, is president of UT, ran for governor. And Tom has started a lot of companies of all kinds. And he was starting a themed hospitality project called Ancient Laura Village. And that was my entry into the industry, and I fell in love. That was late 2018 that I met Tom, and 2019 is when I made the switch. So I love the industry, and that project really opened my eyes to everything about what makes this world fun and exciting. And I think it's an evergreen industry. We'll never not need to be entertained. The only thing that changes is the means and the methods, the technologies. But I think COVID was probably the worst case scenario for our industry. And yet it really affirmed that whether you're introverted or not, we're social creatures. We like to get out of the house. We like to do things. So I'll never go back to traditional financial services. I'm here to stay. And I've got people like Lewis and Sam that are 1,000 times smarter than me. So, my job is to help lever that expertise and talent to great outcomes for investors, for customers, and for the people that go to these things.
I'm glad that you found your way to the greatest form of entertainment ever devised.
I mean, I agree with that.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it is. I preach this all the time.
Yeah, no, it's the best. It's the, I've done every form of entertainment that you can think of, and this is the one that I picked to do full time as well. So it's great. So how did you guys come together as a group, and what exactly are the services that OE Entertainment is providing?
Well, this is the part where I take a swig of bourbon.
It's always allowed.
Yeah, I've just got water because I don't want to slur. So that project, Ancient Laura Village, is really how this all started. When I joined that, it was in January of 19. And you have to understand, I'm a finance guy that's had a touch of real estate and hospitality and a bunch of other things. I'm also, a geek. I love Lord of the Rings and Dungeons and Dragons and video games and all this. And this was a chance working with Tom to sort of merge my professional side and my personal side. And my first official meeting with him, he showed me the budget and the pro forma for this project. And it was 150 room resort. Can't remember the capital budget, but basically the thing was going to get opened in about 14 months. And we hadn't, it was raw land. And it was like, okay, I know this is wrong, but I don't know all the ways it's wrong. And so the first thing I need is a really sharp finance guy. that has track record and can help me pick this thing apart and make it a realistic time frame and budget. So I started asking around, and Lewis's name kept coming up, and I think it was the third time, and I was like, well, I guess I better meet with this guy. And we met at a Panera, and as soon as I had the same realization you probably did. It's like, oh, I started Regal and I grew it and all that, and I'm like, okay, this guy's pretty sharp. This is exactly the kind of partner I need. So that's how Lewis and I got together. And when we left the Ancient Lore Village project and started OE, the reason we started OE, and we'll get to what we do today in just a second, but it was Ancient Lore Village taught us how hard it is to be successful in this space. We articulate it more concisely now, but it was realizing finance, operations, and creative all have an equally important part to play, and curating that is very difficult. So we feel like we get the finance and ops side pretty well, but we knew we needed some bona fides in the creative side, especially themed entertainment and all the ways that can be applied. As we all know now, adjacencies like retail, hospitality, food and beverage, etc. Same thing. Sam's name comes up, and we met him down in Atlanta, and we had a delicious lunch, and it was like, this is a guy we need. He gets it, and he can help, round out the expertise for our clients and projects.
We probably would have hired Sam even if the food wasn't that good. Yeah.
The alcohol was really great. That probably had more to do with it.
So before we hear a little bit more about how you all formed, you probably have been the first person ever on the show to say a pro forma. Can you define that for the audience? Because you guys are finance guys, and I think it'd be good to hear that. Just a lot of people maybe who watch maybe on the creative side. So do you want to talk about like the feasibility and that aspect of it?
Lewis, you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So a pro forma is really just your profit and loss statement, and it's a projection of what that profit and loss statement would look like. And that's just one component of what we would offer within our services.
Yeah. And in order to do that correctly, precursors to that are understanding things like throughput, capacity, attendance, capture rates, all of the operational components that inform, and then the creative and design constraints as well that typically start with just an assumption and then get informed with time to produce an outcome. Is it financially sustainable?
It's in a creative person's most feared software, Excel. Yeah. So creatives typically hate it, right? but it's what's required for business plan.
And so pro forma analysis and that, want to talk a little bit more about your capabilities?
Yeah. So, at our heart, we're really a development company, and all that entails. So our original goal in February, on the heels of ALV, was actually to own and operate an attraction. And so we were putting together a design build contract with a vendor to do a space themed attraction, the tie into OE, in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. And when COVID hit, we realized this is a really stupid idea. This is a horrible time to be launching a new venture and attracting capital. And so we did a lot of consulting at the beginning of our company's life, but the goal has always been to be a company that executes. So within the all-encompassing broad scope of development, you have operations consulting, financial modeling, pre-feasibility, site selection and analysis, vendor management and selection, contracting, and then fundraising and building a capital stack. And that's something that is pretty unique in the industry. Got a lot of attention, especially when we launched, and we played that up. We talked a lot about that in our marketing, about our bridge between finance and this industry. And we dialed that back because we realized that looks like magic to too many people. And it created an issue where we were inundated with people that are like, all I need is the money, and I've got this great idea. And the reality, and we got it's a Buzz Price had this great turn of phrase of yes if instead of no. I really detest how finance people, it's like, my job is to say no. I really dislike that. It's your job is to say yes if. And we just got tired of listing all the ifs because we'd have great ideas and people with meritorious, great backgrounds. But the difference between someone that wants to do $1 billion project and it's a great background, and someone fresh out of school that wants to do $1 billion project, it's basically none. There's not enough there. So we really try and emphasize now, and this is everything from our marketing copy to our compensation structures. Our job is to develop the project, and our compensation is based on it being executed. Fundraising and all that is implicit, and it's part of that scope. But we're not brokers, we're not advisors. We don't want to live in boardrooms pitching projects. We want to live on the field, seeing them come to life.
I would also add that when we go and meet with these players that have money in the capital markets, if it's an institutional investor or it's a family office member, the reason we do all this work versus just be a broker is we have to be able to stand by the numbers. We got to stand by the business plan that we're pitching. We have to believe in it, and we have to own it as well. And that's just part of our core. And we've turned down many engagements, as Matthew alluded to, where they just want you to raise money. That's just not the right way to do it.
What would you say some of the key projects that you've each worked on that not only informed your career paths to form OE Entertainment, but really was like sort of like a turning point for you professionally, that sort of helped sort of galvanize the creation of OE?
Well, in my case, it was Ancient Flora Village. That project, we were doing a lot of really neat things. And the project is open and it's successful now. So you can go visit it. And Melissa Bletner, who's the CEO now, is the general manager that I hired there, and she's an incredible lady and a great leader. But our architect, a man named Daniel Levy of DK Levy, had heard me talking about the premise of this resort was about story. Why I fell in love with it was Tom Boyd, the founder, had just come off the campaign trail with his son, Randy Boyd, and seen, the visceral, politicized sort of environment that is American politics today. And he wanted something that's sort of wholesome and positive. And I thought that was a beautiful notion. And again, leveraging my personal background and my passion, I had seen the Evermore project in Salt Lake and some of the operational issues they had with what they were trying to do. And my conclusion at the time was that a big part of that was the reliance on live actors. So the conceit was, well, we need some technology-based solution to address that, to provide this story through the resort. And I was just saying that. So we were meeting with investors, partners, all kinds of people, and it's like, what is this place? And it's a story resort, and this is how we're going to do it. And Daniel introduced me to the Weber Group, which he knew through senior living facilities. And they also have a themed entertainment division, and they do fabrication. And Adam McIntyre, one of their principals, is like, well, how are you going to do that? I was like, I have no idea. I just know that's what we need. He said, well, you need to talk to Denise Weston, who did Magic Quest and who knows RFID, and she'll sort of sort you out. And Denise is the one that, took my finance Excel-driven eyes and, pried them open and introduced me to TPA and took me to IAPA. And it was an incredible education, and I respect Denise so much. And I'll also say I left every meeting with her with a migraine, because it's like oil and water from a personality standpoint, just as far as process. But brilliant creative, could conceive of the color purple if she grew up in a black and white world. But I see all of this challenge and all this conflict between project management, between creative, between people that don't know how to underwrite this thing and don't understand what's the collateral value of an underground dwelling that's vaguely resembling Lord of the Rings. That there's all these issues, and that had a profound impact on me because I believed in my core and still do that what we were trying to do would have worked, but no one believed it, and there was no way to get from A to B. And we got incredibly close. We tripped at the finish line on a large investment that would have fundamentally shaped our path. But the takeaway from that was these worlds aren't talking in the way that they need to. And that's candidly, that's still happening. It's getting somewhat better. There's new issues, but finance and Wall Street, or however you want to refer to the money sources, a lot of them don't get our space. And that's to everyone's detriment. That's to investors, customers, the operators, real estate developers, all of them. So OE is our conceit of, well, let's fix that and let's monetize it. So that's really, I think, how this all came about. And that was my turning point. Louis, you want to talk about sort of where you felt the shift?
Well, where I cut my teeth in business was certainly at Regal. I joined, I was like 26 years old. Company, we had 2 theaters, is probably worth about 10 or 15 million dollars. And then 7 years later, we sold it to KKR for $5 billion. So that, we went from 2 theaters to 500. I think when I left, I had 20,000 employees. So you learn a lot about hiring and when to scale and when to add layers of management. So when you grow on steroids like that, you learn a lot. I was able to take some chips off the table and start my own businesses, and usually start them from nothing. So I had a software training and education company that I was a co-founder with and CEO, and we specialized in Microsoft's technologies, and we were able to grow that from 0 to 12 million. So that was a wonderful experience as well. And it's always different when it's just your money, right? When you're not borrowing anything. But so I've been able to do that in 6 or 7 businesses. But probably the greatest lessons that I've learned in this industry is being a grandfather. So I'm a grandfather to 4 children, 7 and under. And to be able to look at entertainment through their eyes, you start really reevaluating this whole notion of, do they have enough things? Do they have enough stuff like we all go through? Or do you want to buy them fewer toys and actually, spend time with them? Take them to a monster truck rally or take them to Peppa Pig or something like that. And the answer is, my wife and I made that commitment that that's how we will spend our time and money, is creating memories. And that's really, at the end of the day, the business we're in.
So I don't know that there's like a moment or a particular project for me. It's more of an evolution. When I was at Universal, coming up, it was MCA, and it was a very, very kind of tough, regimented management style. And I learned in that environment, and I was effective in it. And then as MCA went out and there were new owners, and we all know there was a lot of owners, and I've actually worked at Universal for every one of them. I saw that the management style and the processes, everything evolves, and these new companies would bring in new things, and that kind of freed me to develop my own management style, and really not to be, I guess, shackled by what everybody was doing, but by what I thought was the best way to get the right results. And that was really freeing, because frankly, I wasn't always comfortable with the MCA style, and so that evolution was great for me. And, I think the other kind of, maybe the one moment would be going from Universal to Disney after 20 years and going into project-based work. When I got laid off, I thought to myself, all right, director of entertainment, how many of those jobs exist in the world? How many are available? How many are available where I would like to be? Uh-oh, what am I going to do now? And fortunately, a friend of mine at Imagineering called up and told me that he was prepared to turn my misfortune into his fortune, and he brought me onto the project. And so suddenly I saw, okay, well, all of that operations experience that I had at Universal, I can apply that in production and not only help with the production process, but also help help the operator to receive a product that is well thought out from both sides. And I also saw how I can turn that into from a project into a career. So that was a big moment for me.
I know what you mean by the MCA management style. I read the Jay Bangs book by Sam Chenoweth about Jay Stein developing Universal Studios as a proper destination. Well, that was an interesting read, and I it gave me a glimpse into what I think you mean about that.
Yeah. I don't want to comment too much further, but
sure. If anybody wants to know what he's talking about, read Jay Banks by Sam Chenoweth. It's a fascinating, riveting read.
Mm-hmm. But yes, you got it.
or buy Sam a drink. He's in LA. You can find him.
So can we talk about the Placer tools, if that rings a bell, and how that is essential in your process?
Yeah. So Placer or Placer.ai is it's really a data analytics platform. We're a preferred partner with them. We started using them in 2020. And they have told us we were the first firm to use them in the way that we do. They have geofenced the entire United States and soon other countries. And then they purchase anonymized metadata from various sources. So social media, Facebook, Instagram, really anything that you agree to share your location. And then they pair those two things together. So you can type in an address and you can see they've had 300,000 people visit, and this is everything you need to know about them except for their name. And you can't link up a person's identity, but you can see things like income level, demographics, psychographics, where they live, where they're going. It's an unbelievably powerful tool. So we use that for pre-feasibility, but we also use that for pre-operations, for design assist. The whole idea of knowing your customer is an old thing. Every talented designer is going to say, well, who's our audience, and what do we think they want, and how do we match those things up? What's authentic? What's not? And this is really just today's version of learning about your customer. And what's unique is the ability to get all that data before you have a transaction or before you're operational. And that's what's unique. And that's how we use it. We've had some known IP partners that we've worked with where we utilize Placer to reconcile conflict. So if you have different creative ideas or different program goals or even different IP that you might select for a project, sometimes it's like, well, at the end of the day, whose gut feels right or who's pitched the executive the most effectively, and that's what makes it the project. We try and substantiate those decisions with this data to say, well, these are the kinds of people that we know are coming, and so we think that this will resonate with that crowd. And then sometimes it's, well, we're going to be an anchor. We're going to change that behavior. We want new people to come, and that's fine, but you can't just design it and then build it and hope they come. You then have to market that story is out there so that those new people learn about it and then they come. So it's a big part of our process, and that's sort of how we utilize it.
It's amazing. Going back to the Regal example, we used to pile members of management in a van and drive around the country and pick out theater sites. It's so amazing how efficient this is. It's a little frightening as well. But the top information you get. But we had a situation with a new client today who just said they were looking at a location in Texas, and they said, "Oh, I wish we had asked the developer for the traffic patterns." Well, Matthew was able to generate a report in 2 minutes and send it out to the group that had the traffic patterns for the past year, and it was amazing. So I wished I'd had this information about 30 years ago, is all I can say. So,
would have saved you a lot of miles, I'm sure.
Yeah, a lot of van rides. That's right.
That's amazing. I was just literally, when you said Placer.ai, I typed it in, looking at it. It looks incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And endlessly useful for developers and even academics, I think, studying this kind of stuff and AI statistics and things like that. It's incredible.
It's certainly, marketers really love it because you're able to target demographics. And if you want to focus in certain areas of the country or see what areas of the country are coming to your destination, you can easily do that. And so you can market to where they are and you can market to where they ain't, as we say in the South. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it all seems like it comes into play with feasibility. So do you want to talk a little about what pre-feasibility is and how it differentiates from center feasibility studies, and just kind of talk about your process?
Yeah. So feasibility, first of all, incredibly important process, and again, I think a lot of the talented designers and creative firms are aware of its use. Probably the most obvious and important distinction between pre-feasibility and feasibility is the purpose it's meant to serve. Because we're involved in building the capital stack, we feel we can't be an independent source on whether or not a project will be financially feasible. So we still partner with all of the feasibility firms within the industry. We've worked with most of them, and they're a critical part of our projects and a big relationship to us. It's very important. Pre-feasibility is more iterative. It can start as soon as, hey, I have this wild idea, and it's where we do more than just build a financial model. We use things like Placer to try and say, are we approaching the center, of a targeting range? If you think about your archery targets and your bullseye, that's every possible project that could conceivably exist. We try and get to that middle ring. There's still a lot of ways a project could be successful. There's different variables, things that can move and shift, but we want to kind of get in the hunt. And that's what pre-feasibility is it's like, this is ready for more investment to go get true feasibility done, to progress into design process, to go further along, maybe to sign an LOI with a location, but that's how we articulate the difference.
I would just add to that by saying it's also who you represent. Feasibility groups, even though you may have to fit the bill, they are ultimately representing outside investors in many cases, or a bank if the bank is going to finance you. So they have to be third party. So we get why they have to be third party and stand arm's length from a transaction. But we really work for the owner. We work for that creative person with that idea to best represent them and go back and forth. It's a very iterative process. It's not a pass-fail, which you would get, in some type of feasibility scenarios. It's going to be a very iterative process where we keep that person's dream, but sometimes we put it in what we feel is the most viable business model.
Have you encountered any increased friction with financing with the inflation and interest rates, what they are right now? Or is that sort of like just kind of a bump in the road in the process, or no effect at all?
I'll field this one. It's tighter. There's no doubt about it. So with interest rates, that same business model is not going to make as much income, right? And so it's got to service that debt. Banks get a little more nervous. Some of them have ratios and what types of real estate developments they can finance. And so they may be hitting those barriers. In the capital market side, particularly the more money you need from capital markets and investors, Their rate of return requirements may now be in the 20s, 20%. And so it's going to rise automatically with interest rates to cover that spread for risk. But yeah, I mean, the price of poker has gone up, but deals can still get done. You just need to have great margins in this environment.
Yeah, and themed experiences are notoriously slow to get to making money. It's like if you want to build a theme park, you've got to really, really want a theme park.
Yeah, it has to be patient money. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Let's talk about a specific project. Let's talk about your project 407, the Gateway to Adventure. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so that was probably our first big project as a firm. We got we're actually talking about it today to a local leadership group, but June of 2020, we responded to a RFP that was issued by GDUA. It's spelled Kitua with a K and a T, but pronounced with a G and a D. GDUA LLC, which is the non-gaming economic development arm of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. And they had acquired 200 acres in Sevierville, Tennessee, right at the interstate exit 407, which is the exit that services the Smoky Mountains, Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, Dollywood, this entire market. And at the time, it was about a 14 million annual visitor market, and it peaked during COVID around 17 million annual visitors. But that RFP was for a project manager, and they were going to do a series of ground leases and pretty incidental development strategy. So we responded with a bunch of other firms, and our response was a couple of pages on how we could do that and many more on the experience economy and our worldview and why we felt that was more valuable, and a lot of the data points that support why it's a more valuable real estate development strategy. And the CEO at the time responded and said, this is really interesting, but how would you do this? And it just took us down the path. So we ended up a partner and a development entity whose scope was to develop these 200 raw acres. And that's been a great opportunity for us to work with a lot of the firms we all know and love on different phases and iterations of the vision for what the 407 could be. And it's evolved several times as GDUA and the tribe has evolved. About midway through last year, they publicly announced a large commitment and partnership with Sports Illustrated. And that was probably the biggest attitude adjustment that EBCI have had in a long time, and a big capital commitment. And the impact that had to the 407 project was to really focus on resort development amenities. So the general idea of the 407 is to curate a regional destination. And since we began our scope, again, it was raw land. There was a large grading, endeavor. There was a literal mountain that we had to blast and get rid of to make way for the world's largest Buc-ee's. Up until about 2 weeks ago, Texas took it back. Texans are very insecure. They needed to be the biggest again, so they took it away. But for a while, we were the world's largest. And that's a $50 million facility. And it hasn't been a full year. It almost has been a full year. But from late June of last year to the end of May, we've had 8.5 million people visit that Buc-ee's. And just to give you a sense of scale, Dollywood, which is our local theme park, which is a great park, they did 3.5 million people in their operating season. So this gas station is unlike anything if you've never been to a Buc-ee's. And we've got a courtyard that's opening this year. And then again, we're focused now on a resort program. Up until last year, when this was announced, we were focused on a retail dining entertainment district, which has been delayed in order to pursue this resort program. So it's development is hard, and it's momentum driven, and it's about communicating, the strategy and the goals, and sometimes those goals change. You can conditions change, and you have to absorb that, roll with it, keep going forward. Here we go. So it's been an incredible project. It's had its ups and downs for sure, as any big project does, but I've probably never been more optimistic about the future than I am now.
Cool. Anything else to add from Lewis or Sam about the project?
Well, I mean, I think it's a wonderful location. So the old comments in real estate about location, location, location. This is a great example. I mean, to have 1 mile of interstate visibility and be the real corridor where 14 million people a year take this exit, and that location is the first thing they see. I mean, you can't get past that. So it's a wonderful location. It will be successful. It's interesting to see how you phase these larger scale developments and, get people to start, go from stopping at a Buc-ee's for 40 minutes to staying 2 hours to maybe eating at a restaurant and then to ultimately staying there. And it's increasing that stay time. And really, we do the same thing in theme parks, don't we? Or any other attraction. It's the same deal. It's just a much larger scale.
And for me, it's exciting because with the new direction, we're talking to several very well-known companies about being part of the overall program, and so we're excited to see what that can become. But as a producer, I just want to build it. Get that thing built.
Yep.
Well, it's kind of, I wanted to ask a question, and I generally have an idea, but for our audience, it's like, this is a very unique aspect of the industry that you are all a part of, and almost like kind of forging your own path, really, which is interesting. So, who is your ideal client? Like, who are people you actually work with? And then if you want to link that to, OE development that you've expanded on and talk about all that. So like, who do you want to talk to? Who's your, who are your clients? Who are your collaborators? And maybe kind of talk about how that all works.
It's a great question. And candidly, it took us a while to figure that out. We, again, OE Experiences life cycle would be owner operator into consulting company, and now a developer. COVID.
Can you define what a developer is? Because that's pretty. I know what you mean. It's just for our audience because if you're on that side, they may not know what it even is.
No. So a developer, I'm using it in the real estate sense of the word. So a developer is essentially someone who identifies land or facility or building, what an ideal purpose or use for that facility would be, and then makes it happen. So you touch zoning and politics and permitting, vendor selection, building the capital stack, public relations and marketing. But it's, this raw land should be a Chick-fil-A. And that doesn't mean obviously no one can do everything. It just means you have to identify the right solution and the right partners to do everything. So that's what I mean when I say developer. But our ideal customers are generally going to be, I think, 3 categories. It can be creative firms that need finance or operations support. So in that way, sometimes we're actually a sub as part of a larger bid for someone that wants to be turnkey to an owner or operator and say, we'll design an attraction or a park or whatever it is, and we're going to bring finance and operations in with our creative solution. We've done work that way. Sometimes it's creative companies that want to be owners. And that discussion happened a lot during COVID. And there are some examples of where that's worked. You can look at Dynamic Skyfly Attraction. You can look at Makoto, Dig It. But these are creative firms or ride manufacturers. It's like, well, we do this great work for other people. We want to be that too when we grow up. So we've worked with creative firms that do that on a consulting side and on a development side. And then it's owners or would-be owners that either want to scale their businesses or create new ones in the physical space, location-based entertainment, attractions, theme parks. retail, food and beverage, hospitality, any of those. And then the third would be IP companies. IP companies, I think, have really become a lot more aggressive. This was happening before COVID, but COVID was an accelerant to where the old model was here's the fee. You have 5 years, 10 years, 3 years, whatever it is, go figure it out. And then this is the take that I want. That passive model was not working because a lot of developers would pay those fees and then fail. They couldn't attract capital or they couldn't close a lease or whatever it was. And these IP companies started to realize, like, when we have a weak developer partner or even a strong partner that circumstances, prohibited their success, our IP sometimes is no longer relevant or it's a lot less valuable. And that opportunity cost is more than whatever that fee was. So IP companies have started to get a lot more aggressive. They'll put equity in, they'll back leases, they'll back debt. They've become operators. You can look at the recent Netflix announcement as an example. You can look at Sony Wonderverse as an example. You can look at all Lionsgate's projects. I mean, there Hasbro, which has had prolific growth and success. So we can work with them as far as what are they missing, and they're all structured a little bit differently. Some are more licensing heavy, some rely on qualified third-party relationships, and others want to do it themselves, and they need help until they get there.
Sorry, I keep getting to unmute. That's really interesting. I think that's really going to enlighten our viewers a lot, because we have all kinds of people watching, and I think a lot of this information you've given is just so rare and valuable in our industry. And I think secretly a lot of people have these questions, and always wonder, what goes on under the hood on the project that they're working on. How did it come to be? And all that kind of stuff. I know I do. So if I'm the music guy, and so if I'm thinking those things, certainly other people are as well. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing all that with us. But to close out, before we get into our advice round, what's the near term and distant future look like for OE Entertainment?
Lewis, you want to do that first?
Yeah, I would say on the traditional service side, there are a couple of target groups that we would like to do more business with. Matthew did a great job of describing the current range of customer. I would like to see us be retained more by the actual developers themselves, whether at malls or whatever, and say, hey, look, OE, go out and find us experiential tenants. I would love to do more business that way. Also, I'd like to see the capital markets approach us that way as well. Candidly, in this space, there aren't a lot of banks, traditional banks, and there aren't a lot of private equity groups that have loaned to this type of business. We tend to know who they are, but I would love to kind of let them also be a client for us. But the thing we're most excited about is OE development, and that is really a continuation of my career and a new offering for Matthew, and that is where we have our own concepts, we arrange our own group, and we're able to kind of eat our own cooking, if you will, and run companies. And I'm used to doing that and have enjoyed doing that through the years. I know Matthew wants to do that as well, and there's nothing like vetting your own concepts and seeing them come to life and run them on a day-to-day business and go through the same struggles and claims to victory that our clients do. But that's really what we're doing. So we will look at some clients and those opportunities and maybe be involved as part owners in their capital stack or their overall capital needs. But we will also fully develop our own projects as well.
Sam, what are you excited about for the future?
Well, I think you guys talked, about the kind of the development of OE in the future, and kind of hit all the marks. But my role within the company is to support you guys, and what I'm excited about is in OE development, helping to create these businesses to the best of my ability in support of the concept. So to be able to deliver something that has a solid product, a solid entertainment piece, a solid operation. I'm excited about getting my hands dirty and helping to deliver.
Cool.
I think for me, I would hope it's not a long-term goal. I hope it's a medium-term goal. But pretty simply, I want it to be true that if someone says OE's involved in a project, it's going to get done. That's my dream. If it's an OE project, it will exist. And to get there, we have to execute. We have to point to things that we've opened. We've seen the full life cycle through. We've attracted capital for. That's why we announced OE development. That compensation structure is different. Consulting's fee for service. Development is contingent on successfully raising capital, and we're paid as part of that project being executed. I talk a lot about incentivization. We want to incentivize ourselves and push ourselves to where we're really happy and doing well is when it's getting done and when it has a good outcome. And we're working on a project now we can't give too many specifics about, but we're working with another developer, a large developer. And they have the scale and the track record and the balance sheet that we know that project is going to get done. And so we want to mirror that within the entertainment and experiential space.
Cool. Well, we always like to, it's been great hearing about your company and your experiences and what you all do. I thought you did a great job of kind of speaking about it. I think a lot of people in our industry really, they know the creative director position, or they know producer, artist, illustrator, music producer. So it's great to have representation from like the business side for projects. I've had a lot of windows into it in my experience with working as an IP holder and working at a design firm and consulting and all that. But if you're working for an owner operator, you probably have almost zero visibility to what the economics that all happens. So far beyond it reaches your plate, right? So it's great to hear that and on the deep dive, and it would be fun to have you all back and maybe bring on some other partners you've worked with and talk about like the whole, how does a real project get built out in the wild that's probably not a Universal or Disney project, because there's a lot to be had there, and it helps designers, project members, and everyone to kind of have a full understanding of that. So with that being said, we'd like to close our shows down by just getting words of wisdom from people and about career advice. You all have been in different industries, and this industry, particularly Sam, since you're very young, so you have a lot of transferable skills. And this doesn't have to be, hey, go to a TEA meeting. Give real advice to people, like whether they're late stage in their career, early stage. And I'm gonna go to you first, because I am going to tell you to wear your TEA hat. I think that I was on the TEA board, vice president, when you were coming into the board or kind of coming up the ranks, and I had no idea who you were, but everyone was talking about you, and then we chatted and met, and I was like, oh, this is a really cool guy, and now you are the president of the Eastern Division, which is quite a over the course of a few years, really, which is really great. So. Love to, how do people get involved with the TEA if they want to volunteer? Recommendations on that, if you could speak to that element, and then any other career advice you have, and then we'll kind of go round robin around the room. But I just wanted to hit you with that first, just because of your unique, position as the TEA Eastern Division vice president or president.
I think probably the most important thing anyone can do in their career is know how to tell their personal story. And I know that sounds sort of hokey, but understanding yourself, your capabilities, your worldview, and knowing how to articulate that value to different stakeholders is everything. For the TEA, and how I think I've been successful in being more involved, is I understood the value of bringing a financial perspective to a highly creative group, and to try and articulate to that group why they need to be thinking this way, how that will positively impact their careers, their work path, the relationships they have with their employers or their clients, or and that was how I approached it. And don't be afraid to put yourself out there, because one of my first interactions with the TEA was applying for the board. I knew very little about the TEA other than I had been to some events and I really liked the people and I liked the energy. And Greg Sinner was responsible for applications to the board, and I didn't know him. And he's like, "Yeah, this makes no sense. Nobody knows who you are, and you don't know enough about the TEA, but become involved, volunteer, go to events, and get your name out there." And that's what I did. And so I spent a year going to as many events as I could, talking to people. And maybe hard to believe, but I'm introverted by nature, so that's not super easy for me to do. But it's an incredible community, and I mean it's an easy place to break into, and it is tight knit, and it is a very close group, but it's also very welcoming. So get out there and again, just learn how to tell your story in a way that resonates with the audience you're talking to.
I wanted to jump on that for a second. So I had to look at some LinkedIn's today, and I feel like a lot of people out there LinkedIn, it doesn't show what you actually do, because they put a lot of flowery language, oh, I do, or they do everything. And if you do everything, you don't do it. It's hard to even pinpoint who you are. So I think being able to tell your story, that's a great advice. And amongst everything else you said, I said that I was going to write a whole LinkedIn post today, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to say that be very clear what you do, and it's not everything, because people can't find a job for everything, right? Just to be, hey, I can do X, Y, Z skills. So that's a great point. Lewis, I'll go to you. Are you ready to answer the question of a career advice? I mean, I want to say legendary career here. I mean, what do we got?
So I will speak to who I think your audience is, and that is, this is not going to be a popular bit of advice, but to me it's necessary, and that is, I would tell creatives in particular to know your numbers. Particularly if you're going to be investing in your own business, you've got this great idea. I know that that's not popular for many creative people. They would say, "Oh, I'm not good at math," and I'm not saying you need to know calculus, but you need to know numbers, and you need to know how your business works. I'm constantly amazed at business owners that don't understand their numbers, and this is probably going to be the largest investment you ever make, maybe second only to your home. And so it's a really important decision, and I just want everyone to be conversant as much as they can be.
Yeah, Excel is your friend, and it's not as intimidating as people think it is.
Yeah, or basic math skills. That's right.
Yeah.
All right, Sam. I mean, very specific for your team experiences. Traveled the world, worked for basically all the companies under the sun. Any advice from you?
I think I'd build a little bit on what Matthew said, just in terms of getting out there. Network is so important in this industry, and really any industry. But I've been really, really fortunate in that, I spent a lot of time at Universal, but since then I've worked for multiple companies, and I've never had to go out and just cold interview. Every job I've gotten has been through either an introduction to the hiring manager, or I've been pursued for the role. And that doesn't happen if you aren't out there meeting people and working on maintaining and expanding your network. So I would say that. And the other thing I would say is to be curious and learn about all facets of the business, kind of building upon what Lewis said. But really, we're blessed to be in this industry. I have in the margin of my notebook, I make notes all the time about something new I've heard about, a new tech or a new attraction or whatever. And I go back and I do the research and find out what it is. And I just, continue to keep on building my knowledge base, because I want to understand what's out there from an industry perspective. I also want to understand what everybody's role is on a team and how they all contribute to the final product. So, don't be don't be siloed. Learn about what every role is and how it contributes.
Oh, great advice from everybody. We really appreciate it. Just to close out, how do people get in contact with you? Who do you want to contact you? What's the plug? Give us the plug here. The website. What's the best way?
oexps.com, and you can find all of us. It links to LinkedIn and our company Facebook page. You can reach out to any of the three of us, and we'll get you sorted. We'd love to hear from you.
Good deal.
That's
well,
awesome.
Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
I was just gonna say, I feel like I attended a very expensive seminar about all of this stuff that you've talked about today. And
the bill's in the mail.
Great. Your breadth and depth of experience and knowledge was on full display, and I've, like I said, my main thing is I do music, but I found all of this fascinating. I'm a fan of developments in architecture and experiences and attractions, and getting to learn more about this side of it was really enlightening. I really appreciate it.
Oh, we're glad to be here. This has been a lot of fun for us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Of course.
Good deal. Well, we're going to be back with more guests in the future. Of course, every few weeks we'll be here, so stay tuned for that. We also have our 100th show spectacular coming up soon. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but we have some fun things in store. Looking back,
the sparklers ready to go.
Yeah, the sparklers, the bottle of champagne. Where are they nows? We've had at least over 100 volunteers working with Themed Experience Television. So we're happy to look back and celebrate. So get ready for that. But we have a couple more shows in between now and then that are going to be a lot of fun too. Thank you to our guests, the distinguished guests from OE Experiences. Really great, like Andy said, I'll just mirror that. Like a really fun conversation, and I would great to have you guys back on or talk about it in a different way of how to collaborate on a project. That'd be fantastic. But from all of us here at TETV and Charlie, our amazing producer in the back, we appreciate it, and we hope you all have a fantastic afternoon, evening, or morning wherever you are in the world.